And welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr, joined as always by Juan Zarate, our national security analyst. Juan, good to see you once again.
Bob, good to see you too.
Let's talk about what's happening in Ukraine. This is not a flashpoint we typically focus on, but the street violence there is getting pretty out of hand.
Right. Keep in mind that we've seen 2 months of protests against the Yanukovych regime in Kiev about the question of whether or not the Ukraine will side more closely with the European Union and face westward, or tie its future and economy to Russia and face eastward. This is an ongoing power battle between the Yanukovych government and the opposition forces, which have taken to the street. What we have in the last 24, 48 hours is an escalation of these protests, which for a number of days had been quelled and quieted, but now have resurrected with a lot of violence, protesters killed, and no resolution in sight.
I mean, as we read about it, protesters killed with multiple gunshots. I mean, this is a very aggressive response.
Yeah, the riot police have been very aggressive, using not just tear gas and crowd control measures, but apparently using live fire and weapons, and so you've got people killed.
What is your sense of how that plays with the populace there? I mean, so the protesters are out there, the real core believers are out there first.
Yeah.
They meet this kind of violent crackdown. I guess it depends on what happens next as to where this goes, what the trajectory is.
Well, it's also a construal of what's happening, right? Because Yanukovych is trying to quell any sense that he's illegitimate or that the actions he's taking and the police forces are taking are illegitimate. They're trying to put the blame on provocateurs, right, and radicals in the opposition. And so there's a bit of a narrative battle as to what's really happening on the streets. That said, there's also an attempt to have a political solution. So Yanukovych is actually sitting down with opposition leaders, but the problem is this seems to be spiraling a bit out of the control of both the government and the opposition leaders.
I don't think I asked the question very well. I guess my real question here, if we can take a crack at this, is how much grassroots unrest is there? Yeah. Or are we seeing just the radicals, so to speak, the worst of the worst who really are just troublemakers?
No, I think there is a fracture in the Ukrainian system between East and West, alliance to Russia, and allegiance to the European Union.
Among the populace.
Among the populace.
There's a debate.
And what's come to a head recently is this question of whether or not the Ukraine would move forward with accession into the European Union. Instead, what the Yanukovych government did was it sided with Russia. Russia has offered billions of dollars in aid. And that has upset the balance in the Ukraine, because the western side of the Ukraine, which is more European in tendency, more European in outlook, doesn't like this government, doesn't like the direction, and certainly doesn't like the decision to side toward Russia. On the other side, you've got the Eastern Bloc, which is closer to Russia, sympathetic to the Russian foreign policy, and close to Putin. And you have this divide in Ukraine, which is coming to the fore on the streets of Kiev.
It's almost unthinkable, but do we have the risk here at all that we could have a complete fracture, that we would have basically two Ukraines?
Well, I didn't think so 2 months ago when this started and you started to see some violence around this. I don't know where this ends. This is the problem. This can spiral out of control. Fortunately, you haven't seen this metastasizing, out into the hinterlands of the Ukraine. This has been isolated in Kiev. That said, if people don't get control of this, if there isn't a political solution, if there isn't a calming of the waters, I don't know where this goes, because there are some real tensions and fractures in the Ukrainian system.
We will put it on our list of things to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
Juan, thanks as always.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.